Hey everyone, welcome to Grappling Monthly, episode 2. This is the podcast that celebrates everything grappling, the art, the culture, and the community. I'm super excited today to be joined by Professor Erika Dawn, head instructor and owner of Legacy West Valley in Northridge, California. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
So proud of you, by the way, for doing this.
I
think it's so cool. Cool.
I'm having fun. It's still kind of amateur hour, but you know.
That's okay.
We got to start somewhere.
You
right?
got to start. Most people don't even start, so.
That's what I thought.
Kudos.
Somebody told me that perfection is the enemy of good.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, I figure let's get started, and then we'll refine.
Yeah.
Over the course.
You'll
of time.
get your flow. You'll get your systems.
Yeah.
You'll get your thing. But most people think about it all the time, and they never take the step to actually begin something and begin a project. So, right there's a win for sure.
There you have it. I guess it's kind of like jiu-jitsu in that case, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, let me just get fit before I come to the gym. Like, no, just come. And
talk to so many people and or bump into people and they'll see like a jiu-jitsu hoodie or something. I'm like, oh, I've always wanted to do that for years. And I'm like, come on, let's go. Let's start. Like, just try. And they're like, oh no, I got to get in shape first. Or, oh, I need to stretch first. But it's just like, once you begin, like then you're in it and then you get going. But starting is always like the hardest part, I think. So for many different things.
So the doors are open and come in anytime, basically, is the message.
Yes,
right?
come on in, we're here.
I love it. So without any further ado, let's get started. Jiu-jitsu started like well before owning a school, right?
Oh yeah,
and becoming a head instructor. So I'd love if you could tell us, how you basically came across jiu-jitsu and how you got involved with it, and
Yeah, I mean, I was a transplant to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
I moved here from Colorado, went right after high school. So graduated high school. I was a dancer. I wanted to do the entertainment dream of coming out and dancing, and I wanted to work for Disney, and I had this whole vision for myself of what I wanted to do. And came out, and that was that entertainment industry is like extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. And so as I was auditioning and looking for jobs, my dad, being a dad, was like, hey, like I would feel so much better if my 19-year-old daughter knew how to defend herself, at least a little bit. And so we looked at various boxing, Krav Maga, like different things. And at the time I was also working at like a personal training gym, or I was involved in a personal training gym. And the owner worked with black belts in jiu-jitsu, like world champion black belts. And he did their strength and conditioning, getting them ready for worlds and all of Pan Ams and a lot of these big competitions. And they said, well, you got to do jiu-jitsu. It's like, it's the best. And I'm like, over here, a dancer, trying to get into the fitness industry, personal training to like be able to set my own hours. And I said, okay, like, I guess I'll go try this jiu-jitsu thing, and totally spelled it wrong and didn't know what I was doing. Had no idea what to expect, like what I was getting myself into. Like I've never been involved in martial arts. But I took my first class, and I was sold. I was completely hooked. I had changed my schedule around to where I could train every day at noon. That was like my time. And I was the crazy white belt. I was a crazy white belt that said, I'm going to have school someday. Like, I found my thing. Like, I've been a dancer my whole life. I live in Los Angeles. It was like, I was just like crazy. It was like, honestly, when I look back at it, like, it's a little bit nuts, but I just knew it. I knew someday that I wanted to have a school, and being involved in the community just changed my life, and it's what I wanted to do. So that's how I got into it. It was like my dad telling me he wanted his daughter to be able to defend herself, and then I got hooked, and then I just made it my life ever since.
So your dad wanted you to have some background in being able to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You found jiu-jitsu and never looked back, basically.
Basically. Yeah. And then, when I was just very vocal about it, and a lot of the times I got a lot of eye rolls, or a lot of hate or a lot of criticism, just because it was like, imagine like the white belt girl coming in who told everybody someday, oh, I'm going to coach and I'm going to have a school. And they were just like, who's this? You're crazy. You're probably not even, I got told a lot. You're probably not even going to make it to blue belt.
Really?
So
like people actually said those words?
Yeah, people actually said those words.
Wow.
Like people were just like, they would, you know, because I'm like very enthusiastic and upbeat, and I knew it's what I wanted to do. And people, they're like, you're crazy. Like, you know, you're probably not going to make it to blue belt. Like, do you know the percentage of people that actually make it like all the way is very, very little. And I would be like, well, yeah, I don't care.
Well, yeah.
And it's not to say it was like an easy journey. That's definitely not the case. There was like tons of trials and things that made it very difficult. And there were times I thought like, oh, wow, am I really going to get to black belt? I don't know. There was some dark times in my journey and in my life, and that I really had to push through, but here we are. We made it.
Yeah, hell yeah, we made it.
We made the dream happen.
Also, to those naysayers, yeah, it's a shitty attitude. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I get it, but I don't know. I never understand why, you know, you would project some negative energy on somebody else's enthusiasm. So kudos to you, basically, for just not even paying it any mind and just, you know, pushing through all the way to black belt.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, presumably, it's not going to stop. So, like...
No, no, definitely not.
So I'm interested, like, jiu-jitsu is probably still, to a certain extent, male-dominated in terms of, like, I think. I don't know actual percentages. I'd be interested if somebody does. But, like, it's got to be 75% or even higher men. And certainly, if it was, at some point, it was earlier on, like probably when you started.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, were there other women on the mats? Did you have role models that you looked up to that were women? Or did you just fight tooth and nail with every other person? Which,
I mean, when I started at my academy, because I didn't originally start at Legacy.
Okay.
I started at a different academy, and I left there after 1 year. And then I was with Alberto Crane at Legacy ever since. But it was just me and one other girl. And she was like my favorite training partner, but you know, she didn't actually progress either. Like she ended up she stopped training. And then when I went to Legacy, it was me and 3 other girls. Okay. A brown belt, and then two girls that were blue belts. And it was just like the 4 of us. And then after that, you know, they ended up leaving. One of the brown belt left the school, and it was just like us 3. And it was a lot of times where I was the only girl in class because they trained in the evenings and I predominantly trained at noon. And so since I trained middays, like I was the only girl on the mat for years and years. And then slowly more women started coming and we started building up our women's team. And now I look at Burbank and I think it's so beautiful because they have such a strong and dominating like team of women there and culture of women. And I think it's a big testament to like the culture of a school. And so it's really, really nice to see how the sport has grown in the women and how many women are doing jiu-jitsu and how many little girls I have in my classes, because in the beginning of my journey, like that wasn't necessarily the case. There were definitely women like dominating in the sport, like, you know, that are still amazing in my role models. But at the time, it was like 2000, I want to say like 14. And Mackenzie Dern was just like on fire, you know, and she had just beaten Gabby Garcia. And I remember like in the beginning, like I really looked up to Mackenzie. Like I just thought she was phenomenal and amazing. And I was like, oh my God, like, well, look at her. Like if she can do it, like I can do it. And Letty Ribeiro and like some of these other amazing women in the sport who were just like the pioneers and like groundbreaking. And it was back then for them, it was only them. Like they would go to tournaments and not even know like if they had people to fight, you know? And so to see how the sport has evolved, like for women, I think is really amazing and really beautiful. And I love it because, you know, sport jiu-jitsu aside, I feel like the awareness that jiu-jitsu brings into our lives for both men and women is you can't can't recreate it. Like, it's so powerful and it's so amazing for kids and for adults. And so for me, I just love to see the sport growing in the trajectory that it's on right now. I just think it's such an awesome thing. But yeah, I think my biggest role model when I started was Mackenzie Dern.
Nice.
And I love seeing where she's at now. Because I was I remember watching you fight at Worlds and like sitting at the pyramid, just like cheering for her. And then to see what she's accomplished in her life too is just like so cool.
Yeah, very cool. Still fighting, still winning.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
She's a mom. She's so cool.
Yeah, all of that things. This is anecdotal, but did you see there was a comment on, and I may or may not include this, but there was a comment on, she made the comment that she actually lost a lot of fans when she became pregnant. And they thought that she was done, her career was done. She came out triumphantly and won her most recent fight, which I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think that's common. I know there was like, forgive me, I'm not like big into sports, but there was like another like female Olympian like athlete who I think like maybe track or something and lost all her sponsors like when she became a mother and stuff. So when I see like women in sports, it doesn't matter what sport it is, like starting a family and then like getting back into their sport. And I think it's like a really amazing thing, because being an athlete on its own is extremely difficult, and being a mother on its own is extremely difficult. So when you combine the two, it's like that's a powerhouse right there.
Yeah,
so.
100%. Nice. And we'll definitely touch on teaching, because I know that's a big part of your everyday. And I want to talk to you about the kids program as well. But just focusing on you in Jiu-Jitsu at the beginning, did you know that you wanted to compete? Because you have, competed quite a bit.
Yes, I wanted to I think at my first tournament, I competed after 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I knew nothing.
Wasted
like,
no time.
but I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Like, that's like the story of my life. But I just signed up for a competition, and I went in and got beat to hell because I didn't know what I was doing or what I was getting myself into. But I was like, oh, that was super cool. Like, my game in the beginning was like takedown, try to pass the guard. And I went in and I fought this girl and she played spider guard on me. And I was like, whoa, like that's my first introduction or exposure to spider guard. And I was like, well, this is so cool. Like, wait a second. And I took my film back home and I showed my coaches, like, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's spider guard. And I was like, well, I want to know that. And so that very quickly became my, I guess the right word, maybe focus, for lack of a better word, was, well, if I go compete and these people are doing things that I've never seen, like, it felt to me like more exposure to more skills.
Yep. And
so then I just wanted that exposure and I wanted that experience. And so I started fighting, I started competing, early white belt all the way up. I have not yet competed at black belt due to like pretty extensive knee injuries. But I competed white to brown and I loved it. And I would say like in my blue belt and purple belt, the goal was to be a world champion. Nice. I'm not a world champion. But when I was a purple belt and I realized like, oh, I'm making this dream of mine, like pursuing of having a school, a reality, my mindset shifted a little bit from world champion to how much knowledge and information can I take in to then be able to share? Because something that's always been, I've just loved, and I feel like my most authentic self, I feel like my most expressive self, and like I get a life high is from teaching. Like I absolutely love to teach. Like it is my favorite part of every day, and I love it. And so the more I competed, the more knowledge I gained, and the more experience I had to share with my students. And so then in like purple belt, I'd always talked about a school since I was a blue belt, white belt even, like I said, from the very beginning, but it got really real for me at purple belt. And I was like, oh, I need to start learning everything I can to one day have my own school. And I always wanted my community to like foster like a place where people felt like they belonged, a place where people felt free to be themselves and to be kind and to take care of one another, but also come to a space where they're receiving excellent education. Because like at the end of the day, this is like an education. Like this is, we're teaching skills and passing down knowledge. And so in my competition, like career, I guess you could say, I competed a lot, and that was always my focus. That was always my focus, was every single tournament, I'm going to be learning something. Whether I win, whether I lose, whether I have a great performance or I have a bad performance, I love to write, and I would go home and I would just write about my experiences.
Nice.
And then through the years, it's been such a beautiful thing to coach my kids and coach my students. And, you know, no matter what they're going through, I feel really confident that I've been there too. And to just be able to pass along like that knowledge to them. And that's like my North Star, you know, is that. And that's always been the case, like coming up, competing, teaching is,
Yeah, for those of us that have had the chance and the pleasure to be in one of your classes, like you're definitely a pédagogue would be the word in French, like an excellent teacher, right? Like you relay information very clearly, dynamically. You make it fun, you know. And I haven't taken the kids' classes, like I've taken the
you should take my kids' classes.
I don't know if I can keep up with the kids. Let's be honest. But that's awesome. So, did you have the chance to teach? Like you said, around purple. Right, is where you kind of had that mindset shift towards realizing the gym ownership dream, right? So is that also when you started teaching? Had you taught a little bit before?
No, I started teaching early blue belt.
Okay.
Yeah, I started teaching, so I switched academies. I started kind of cross-training at like 4-stripe white belt because I knew I wanted to switch academies. And then I started training at Legacy, 4-stripe white belt. And then I ended up getting my blue belt from my first academy. I was not ready for a blue belt, but I got the blue belt, and then I went to Legacy. And within 2 months at being at Legacy, just the way like some certain circumstances ended up happening, they had a kids coach leave, and they were kind of like empty-handed. And I have the afternoon off.
Nice.
Can I help you guys out? And then Professor Crane was like, yeah, like get on the mat, like go help. And I helped. And then the school ended up getting a lot of great feedback about having like a female coach on the mat. And so Alberto had asked me, like, is this something like, do you want to do this? And I've said, yeah, like this is what I've always wanted. Like I want to be a coach. And so I let go a bunch of personal training clients. So then I worked personal training in the morning, and then I worked, kids coaching in the afternoons. And it was a massive pay cut for me in the beginning. But I knew that if I was going to have this goal, that I needed to invest into learning how to be a teacher. And the earlier on, the better. So when I started, I was assisting Professor George Bonilla. I was assisting, he was a brown belt at the time. I was a fresh blue belt, and I started assisting his kids' classes.
Nice.
And then within my first year, he left to go open his own academy. And I had a meeting with Professor Crane, and he said, you're doing the kids? You know, and I was like, oh my God, okay, let's go. Like his trust in me, I will always be eternally grateful for his trust in letting me. There were times I felt like I was fumbling through everything, but he trusted me and let me have the space to develop my skills as a coach. So I started like head coaching at blue belt for the kids, and then started growing and expanding from there. And then when I got my purple belt, they offered me the position of a director. So I directed the kids program. I was starting in purple belt because it was growing, and I had hired on like a handful of coaches, and now we had like an actual coaching team for the kids because the kids program was growing. So then I directed the kids program all the way until I left Burbank to open West Valley. And so yeah, I've gotten a lot of teaching experience. Started at blue belt, did not know what the hell I was doing. But like I said, Professor Crane like trusted me to just try and do my best. And it ended up working out, and it was a beautiful program. And it's something I'm probably like most proud of in my life is the way that program developed and everything I learned through the decade. I was there for a decade at Burbank. So
amazing.
Yeah.
It is a very strong kids program, as is evidenced by any podium you basically go to in a local competition, you have legacy kids like up and down the podium, which is really impressive. So
Thank
testament,
you. Thank you. I'm so proud of those kids. So teaching is my favorite thing.
Yeah. Well, you obviously poured your heart and soul into it because, that's, I think, probably what it takes, right? Yeah.
I think, and then, I had a coach growing up, Carrie. She was my dance instructor. And I always say, like, my family, everybody, my close friends, they all know that, like, she changed my life. I struggled with, like, insecurity and doubt and confidence. And she pushed the heck out of me. There was no BS with her. She demanded excellence and that you show up and that you give your best and you don't say can't. And she'd kick anybody out that said that they couldn't. She didn't have time, space, or energy for that. Like, she wanted us to be the best. And we were, our academy was like a high ranking academy that we traveled all over the US competing. And like, she taught me what it meant to like be a mentor.
Nice.
And so she changed my life. Like, I was a young girl and growing up through graduation and like she changed me as a person. And so I know the power of a coach and a good coach and a bad coach. Yeah. And I know the power of like a strong mentor. And so I'm so grateful to have her as an example in my life, because she showed me that. And I'm 32 years old and I met her when I was 12, and she's still to this day like someone who I consider to be like a monumental person in my life. And so just knowing that was my experience, I know that that's a possibility or is a thing for the kids that I'm encountering on a day-to-day. Is like, as a coach, and I post about it on social media, is like, as a coach, like, there's lots of memes and like funny things that always go around about kids' classes being crazy and this and that. And it's true. Like, you're herding cats and they're like little personalities and you're dealing with so much more than just like the skill of jujitsu. But as coaches, we have like a tremendous responsibility with these kids, because these kids come into our classes and they look up to us immediately. You're a black belt, you're automatically the coolest person ever. And like, it's a really big responsibility. Like the way that you like look at these kids, the way that you make them feel seen, make them feel heard, make them feel important, teach them boundaries, teach them discipline, teach them patience, kindness, teamwork, camaraderie. Like we have a big responsibility as coaches and as mentors, and we have the ability to like make really strong people. And so that has also been a focus of mine, is to know like that's who Carrie was for me. And I've carried that into my adulthood. And so opening my school, and even before opening my school, I always treated the kids in Burbank like Burbank was mine. And I wanted those kids to excel on the mat, and I wanted them to excel even more as people. So yeah, it's just where, as a coach, if you're a coach, you have tremendous influence, and to be wise about it.
I love that. There's, it's funny, you anticipated what was to be my next question, which is what it is that you like about teaching, right? And I think you're definitely like exuding everything that is like the right personality type, maybe, for lack of a better term. Like, you're definitely in the right place and, in the right business. So I think the kids are very lucky.
I love them. I call them my babies. They're my babies.
100%. So how do you prepare for, like, what would be the biggest difference between preparing for a competition and or preparing for teaching like a big kids class or a seminar of kids, whatever,
I mean, like myself training for a competition, so the thing that I always say is like, if you're going to be an athlete, like a professional, like high level athlete, like you see like Tina Dalpra and like some of these, like that is their world. Like they have to be so invested in that. Like they have to, it's not a 1, 2, 3, even 4 hour training while you're on the mat. Like when you're an athlete and you're prepping for like high level competition, like some of those athletes are, it's like there has to be your whole world, your mindset, your diet, your recovery, your your social life. Like, so I think being like a professional athlete or someone who wants to like make that their world, like, and it's not a bad thing, but you have to be selfish.
Yeah.
Like you have to be selfish. And you have to be ready to like make tremendous sacrifice to make those things happen.
Right.
So it's definitely a different mindset, I think, completely from being an athlete and focusing on your athleticism and your sport and your craft and your mind and your lifestyle. And then teaching classes is like a whole nother thing, because being like a really good teacher, I feel requires a sense of selflessness. And you have to be able to check your ego, you know, in the case that's like, let's say you get asked questions that you don't know the answer to.
Right.
It's very important that you don't BS your way through those, that you have the, I'm losing a word, but like you have to be able to say, you know what, I don't actually know the answer.
Yeah.
Let me go and see. Or teaching and like in your question specifically, like a kid's class, like it's so much more than just teaching jujitsu. Like you sit down on the mat and you teach an adults class, like chances are they're all pretty much watching, listening, paying attention. If they weren't, they go with their partner and they figure it out.
Yeah.
With kids, it requires, you have to be patient. You have to be articulate. You have to use imagery. You have to use simple vocabulary. You have to have firm boundaries to maintain the structure and order of your classes. You need to be on the same page as your staff. Make sure your staff understands what's expected of them, the boundaries. So it's very different. Like I would say like being an athlete and competing and like running classes is like, they're two separate like folders basically that require different skill sets and different mindsets.
Nice. So do you remember the first time you taught a class, or like kids or adults, doesn't matter? Yeah. Do you remember how that went? Like,
yeah, like I remember.
Obviously, it wasn't enough to scare you away from teaching.
No, it wasn't enough to scare me away. But I remember going in and they were teaching like osotogari, just like very simple, like collar, sleeve, kick, hook, push.
Yep.
And I remember being like so nervous. And like I think I told the little girl, like I remember her looking at me, like I squatted down and I remember her looking at me like, who are you? Like what? And that made me nervous. And then I think I told her to like kick on the collar, like just backwards. And I remember just being like a little nervous in the beginning. But like anything, like you just keep showing up and you just keep absorbing and learning. And like I said, I worked with Professor George in the beginning. And one of the biggest takeaways that he told me in the very beginning, I think like day one, was you have to know your boundary as a coach, and you have to make sure that you are constantly sticking with and being consistent in your boundaries for the kids. Because if not, they're going to push them. Yeah. And they're going to go all over.
100%.
And then you're going to lose them. And then they're going to, and it's a mess. So I think it's just determining your boundaries and making sure that you're like following through. But yeah, my first kids class, I was like super nervous. I think I taught them like wrong and stuff, but just over time, it just felt right. I think it's like what my heart has always just loved so much. And so when your heart's in something, like it's gonna work out. It's gonna be good.
Yeah. No, I can't help but agree with that.
Yeah.
For sure. You mentioned that, you know, and the question is clearly not about money, but you did mention a pay cut at one point from what is presumably a successful personal training business, right? To kind of taking a chance.
Yeah.
And did you ever have any like moments where you're like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But you know, like
like what I'm interested in, like what was driving you to ignore maybe any alarm bells or things that somebody perhaps more risk averse might have like backed away from, you know, because it's a little bit of a leap of faith, right? To say like, I'm going to make this my life, right?
So I've talked about it before. I talked about it on my social media. I've talked about it on a handful of other podcasts. My dad is like my parents both actually, but my dad is a massive influence in my life. And he always says a saying like, never pursue money. Pursue excellence and money will pursue you. And he just instilled that in me at such a young age. And that was always always something that would come up as a family. And for me, it was, am I pursuing excellence? And if I'm pursuing excellence, then money will pursue me. So when I first moved to LA, I was so poor. I was so poor. The deal was with my parents, they would let me move to LA, Los Angeles, as long as I could financially support myself. They were not going to help.
For the record, the cost of living is pretty wild out here.
Oh, pretty wild. But and 2012 was when I moved.
Okay.
And I was so poor. Like I couldn't afford, I had a car, couldn't afford gas. I walked everywhere. I was working at, when I first moved here, I got a retail job and I was making $560 a month and my rent was $500. I had to figure out how to live on $60 a month. Yeah. And then I got into the personal training, started building up my clientele, and I went from here up. So I went like this. It's always been it's always been a graph: up to go down, up to go down. You have to go down to go up. You got to go down to go up. You got to go down to go up. And so, I built up my clientele in personal training, and I was down and I went up. And then I got the job for Jiu-Jitsu, and it aligned with my goals of what I wanted someday to have a school. So I took the pay cut to go down. And so I went down in my finances, but I always made sure, growing up, my parents were really into Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you know who that is.
I've heard the
Financial peace planner guy. So I was always pretty familiar with budgeting, made sure I had just enough to survive basically.
Right.
And went down. And then once I figured out the coaching, then I started doing private lessons, and Professor Crane let us keep our private lessons. So cut the personal training for the coaching, but started figuring out the coaching. So it went up when I got the private lessons, and then went down a little bit when I completely cut the personal training out to 100% pursue jiu-jitsu. Directing the kids program went up. So it's been like this constant graph, but the laser beam focus has always been, do not pursue money, pursue excellence, and money will pursue you. So whatever you do in your life, if you're doing it wholeheartedly and you're giving it 150% of your time and your energy and your dedication, and you're consistent and you grit through it and you're smart. There was tons of sacrifices I had to make. And there was a lot of doubt at a lot of time. There was a lot of tears at a lot of time. I am, like I said, 32 years old, and I've never really had a strong social life because I had really big goals that required a lot of me to make them happen.
Sacrifice,
and a lot of sacrifice. But as long as you're willing to do that sacrifice, you can do it, and I was, like I said, I budgeted and I was smart, and I had roommates along the way. And then at one point, I lived on top of the gym. You make sacrifices. I let go of a really nice apartment to live in a super crap studio apartment, you make sacrifices to make it happen. And then, in the Blue Belt, when I started my private lessons, that's kind of when Venmo became a thing. And I had Venmo set up to a separate account. And everybody Venmo'd me for my private lessons, and I never touched it.
Nice.
I never touched it because of the goal. And again, it was not easy. There was a lot of sacrifice. There was a lot of doubt, but there was also systems and consistency, and I just knew this is what I wanted, so badly. So
nice. I'd be willing to bet that some of those systems are also put in place to help the school thrive as well, right?
Yes.
It's interesting because I did a little bit of traveling when I was younger, and it was similar to what you just stated. I was a waiter, and whatever I would get in tips, I had a meager paycheck that I would absolutely not spend. And then whatever I had in tips, if it was a round number, 10 or 20, 50, what have you, then I would also not spend it. And that bank account grew, right? So if I had made $57 in tips, so I had to find a way to have, whatever fun I wanted to have was $7. I could spend that $7, but the 50, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that what you just said really resonates, and it's a great way to kind of just have this nest egg grow.
Yeah. And I did that. Again, my parents, I grew up on the Dave Ramsey stuff, and so mom and dad taught me the envelope system, and you get your paycheck, and at the time I used a lot of cash and put X amount for groceries, X amount for bills, X amount for this, and I had a little fun account, which whatever's left over goes into that fun account, and just staying diligent in that, luckily for me, I really like to go outside and go to the beach and go do like stuff that doesn't cost a lot of money.
Right, yeah.
And I'm not a shopper. I actually hate shopping so much. So I was good on those areas.
Nice.
But yeah, there's sacrifice. But anything worth having requires that. Anything in life, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there's a little known mixed martial arts champion by the name of Habib Nurmagomedov, who just actually posted something about sacrifice really being the difference maker.
Yeah.
Because you can have discipline, but everybody can have discipline, but not as many people are necessarily willing to make the sacrifices necessary to achieve large goals, like great goals,
Yeah.
So yeah, that rings true, I think, in this case as well. What a perfect segue to talk maybe a little bit about Legacy West Valley, right?
Woo-hoo.
So yeah.
We did it. We made it happen. Oh my God.
100%. October 2024,
Yep,
right?
October 21st, 2024, we opened the doors.
Amazing.
So, but the journey started long before that.
So tell me a little bit about the journey to get to opening the doors.
So, I always knew I wanted to have a school. And I was saving for years and years and years and years. And I kind of had a vision of what it was going to look like a very small space, start very small, kind of do what I felt like I could with what I had. And then one day, Gloria, my business partner, she approached me and asked me out for coffee and asked me if I would consider opening up a school with her. And the backstory on Gloria is way back, I used to teach like a boot camp program.
Okay.
And Gloria was like a diehard attendee to these boot camp classes, and she would do like 2 hours a night. And I call her Mama G, and I would always say like, you got to try jujitsu. You got to try jujitsu. You got to try jujitsu. She's like, no, mija. Like, no, I don't do jujitsu. Like, finally I got her to jujitsu, and she was hooked.
Nice.
So I was always training and she was training, and we started training together, and we got very close. And then one day she just asked me out for coffee, and she asked if I would ever consider opening up a school with her. And I said yes. And I hadn't considered that being a possibility, but I think, like the way the universe works, and it just worked out. And we sat down and we talked about, like, I told her I had always wanted this, and this was my vision. And she explained her vision, and our visions aligned, our core values aligned.
Amazing.
Our communication was solid. Our trust in each other was solid. And so we decided, how we would start it and what we would both be putting in to like make it happen. And sat down with a lawyer and did the whole partnership agreement thing. And then the big challenge for us was it took us a year. It took us exactly a year to secure a space.
Right.
So we started looking for a space. We had a realtor, and he was trash. I'm being completely candid.
We'll leave names out, but you were trash.
Oh yeah, you were trash, man. Like, you were no help at all. I could find more online, and I'm like a boomer.
Good Lord.
But anyways, so then I turned to one of my students' moms, and I was really trying not to talk about it because I was like, oh, I don't want people to like worry that I'm leaving. But I knew she was a realtor. And we were driving to Vegas for a competition. Her daughter was competing. We rode together, and I told her everything. And she started helping us find a space. And oh my God, she was like a freaking bulldog, like a bloodhound, just looking out spaces. And I told her kind of what we were looking for. And then, this space actually, we saw was one of our very first places that we saw. There's a place just like a couple doors down. It's old Keller Williams. And she found it, and we made an appointment to come see. That space was way too big. Okay. And it was like, it was way too big. It was out of the budget. And we walked over here, and we were like, well, what about this one? And he was like, unfortunately, I cannot show you because they're already in a lease. Okay, bummer. I looked at the windows, and I was like, but this is the spot. Like, this is perfect. And I remember just going home and being like so bummed. I was like, this is the space. And Gloria is she's so good because she's always like, mija, it's all going to work out. Mija, just chill out. Because I'm very type A, and I like, let's go. Yeah. So we continued to look for spaces, and then we found another one. And this place just dragged their heels. We submitted our letter of intent, And every email we would send, they would take 3 and 4 weeks to respond. And it was just dragging out. But we kept pursuing it because we were like, well, this is the only one that's been working out so far.
Right.
And then the realtor for this space, his name was Kyle. Kyle reaches out and says, hey, like that lease fell through. Like the space is available.
Wow.
So we came and we saw it and we walked in and it was so ugly in here. It was like, red carpet, red walls, but it was completely open. It was a mattress store. And I was like, this is it. This is it. Nice. I knew this place was it in January. Yeah. And now here we are in May. I was like, I want it. We literally left. We walked out the door with Kyle. I'm standing with Kyle and Gloria and the realtor, and the other building called. Hey, we have a lease for you. Okay, well now what do we do?
Yeah, seriously.
You know, and so we had the lease, we're reviewing it, and we decided, okay, let's pursue the space. It's bigger and it's really good price. Okay. So let's pursue it. But there was just something inside that was like, ooh, like my gut was like, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
And so that was May. June. By the end of June, I told Gloria, I said, that's not the space. Mm-hmm. It's not the space. I said, let's reach out to Kyle and see if the other one is still available, this one. And we reached out. He did. I ended up going on a vacation in July. Mm-hmm. And on the drive to the vacation, we drafted up a letter of intent for this space. And we submitted it the 3rd of July. Kyle gets a hold of me and he says, hey, tomorrow's the 4th of July. We're going to be closed through the weekend. Yep. Hopefully I'll have some sort of answer for you by Monday. Sure enough, Monday, he said, your letter of intent it's being gone over. We should have an answer. And it literally happened like that. Amazing. Like this other building had just been dragging us on for like so much time. Yeah. And then we submitted the letter of intent by July 3rd, and August 29th, I picked up keys. And it was this space. And it was like from the very beginning, I was like, this is the one. So it was really cool to see that this place like came to life and it was like the one. Yeah. And I'm just like eternally grateful for Gloria and our partnership. And we work so well together. And like I said, like from the very beginning, like I'm very like keen on, I call it like my pit. Like I get this like really strong
gut feeling type of
thing. And when something's wrong, when I feel like I'm doing something wrong, and when I feel like I'm doing something right, like it's like there's like a peace. And just that was always the case with this space, and that was always the case with Gloria. We make a phenomenal team. And like I said, like our vision is so aligned in the sense of taking care of like the people first, like people first. And that's just like how we both want this school to be. And we're new, like it's only, February, 4th. So we've been open full November, full December, full January. So we've been open for 3 full months. And I already feel like the space and the culture is like adopting the vision that both Gloria and I had.
That's so important too. Yeah. Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so happy.
And it needs to be said that, it's not necessarily common to have a fully female owned and operated gym, right? Like martial arts facility, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically. Although there are other programs, and we'll get into all the different programs at Legacy West Valley. But yeah, kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, that definitely came up, because it is rare, I think. I don't think it's, like, I think there's more, but it is rare for 2 women to own a school. Yeah. But again, my dad's 2 lines, he said, build it and they will come and pursue excellence. And I said, okay, well,
Feel the dreams a little bit.
I'm just going to do it, I guess, and it's like, whatever your thing is, jiu-jitsu or, whatever your passion is or whatever you feel is like important to you, like, don't let anybody like tell you otherwise. And they will. And like they did to me. And of course I was teased and people would pick on me. And either if it was joking or not joking, like you got to have like thick skin when it comes to pursuing like things that are like so true in your heart. But like, man, I'm telling you, like firsthand, like if you do it and you like make it happen, like you can do it. Like, and it's the most beautiful thing ever. As long as you have that grit and that follow through.
Yeah. Amazing. Fantastic. I love it.
Yes.
So July 4th, 5th type of thing to October 1st, opening the doors. That's a pretty quick turnaround.
Oh man, I'm a crazy lady.
Tell me a little bit about like the blitz that was that period, leading up to opening the doors.
Well, I'm crazy. Gloria's for it.
Okay.
My realtor was also, she has her own contracting company as well. She's like I said, total like bloodhound. She's amazing. Like such an incredible woman. And her partner are both that way too. So when I said, hey, like we get X amount of time, no rent, what do we got to do to make it happen? And her partner, they both amazing, strong women were like, okay, let's go. I literally took the leap of faith. I quit my job. I let go of my clients. I wasn't working for August to when we opened. And I lived here. I literally lived here. It was 16-hour days, 17-hour days. Yeah. I had amazing people. I was really close friends helping me, whether it was her and the contracting crew, like getting everything going. I had another friend working really close with me on all of like the computer side of things and like the business side of things and getting all the legal work done and getting the website and all that kind of stuff. So I had like an amazing support system, a very close knit group of people that really came together to like make it happen, whether it was within the building and like, Coach Drew and Coach Ben and you and my friend, Professor Mike and his wife, Celine. And then like, I had like these people just like come together and be like, yeah, like, let's go. And whether it was, we spent 3 days straight building the subfloor to spending hours and hours on the computer, like website and getting everything put together and legal and ordering like orders and vendors. And it was definitely that. What did you say? Blitz?
Yeah, it was a blitz.
It was totally that. It was like, it was crazy. Yeah. And I couldn't sleep because I felt like I couldn't sleep because I felt like my to-do list was just like, I don't know if you ever, I really like Disney movies. But in the movie Hercules, like he fights this like dragon and he like cuts the head off the dragon and then it like grows 3 more heads. Okay. And I was literally like watching Hercules and I was like, that is my life right now while I'm getting to school, because it was like, I would do one thing off my, like write a big to-do list and check it off. And then it was like that one to-do list or that one task like spawned like 3 or 4 more. Oh my God. Totally. And so it was hard to sleep. It was a lot of sleepless nights. There was a lot of like anxiety that came along with this to-do list of like getting this place going. And I literally could not have done it like without my friends and the people that like really showed up. And whether it was someone texting me like, hey, I have a free morning. Can I like come by and help you with whatever? Or like, hey, have you eaten? Like, can I bring you lunch? And I'm like, oh, it's like 4. Like, no, God. I haven't eaten anything today. But yeah, it was definitely like a whirlwind getting it going. Yeah. But it was also like, I'm really proud of it. Like, I'm really proud of it from going from just like this ugly red purple box to this space. And, I'm a Pinterest girly. So I had a bunch of stuff on Pinterest and I knew what I wanted it to look like. And then I worked with another training partner on the interior design and he was amazing and just like coming out here and like helping me bring this like vision to life. And Gloria was amazing. And she's like, yep, I like it. Like, let's go, and then we did it. We made it happen. And
that's phenomenal. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're back. We're here with Professor Erika Dawn, owner and head instructor of Legacy West Valley. And thank you so much, I have to say, like for joining us. This is very fun. Yeah, we're learning a lot, I think, about what it takes to make it in this world. It's been. Sorry, I'm interrupting. It's been cool because, like I said, I've been on a handful of podcasts and it's always been like my journey coming up. But I have not really gotten the opportunity to talk about my goals and like the extent that they've been with like in my head. Like, so it feels really, really cool. And like, thank you for asking me to do this because it feels really, really nice to be able to talk about my dreams that I
held safe for myself, but that now I made them come a reality.
Yeah.
It feels really like nice to talk about. So.
Well,
Thanks.
let us know if you ever release a playbook or a how-to guide
Okay.
or a what not to do
Oh gosh.
for people that are interested in perhaps opening an academy, right?
Okay.
Because there's a lot of learnings there
Oh
that
my God,
like,
there's so many.
right? So
Oh, yeah.
like, and you mentioned that you like to write, so you know, just
do.
putting it out there.
Oh,
if you
it's
have,
all documented.
there you go. There you go. So wonderful. We'll keep an eye out for that. All right. So I want to talk just a little bit about like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like world nowadays, modern, you know, industry of BJJ, whether it's competition, brands, you know, the community. Like, what is it about BJJ today that has you still like so excited to be a part of it? Like,
Yeah. I think to, you know, see how it's expanded throughout the years is so cool. And I think like the trajectory of where it's going and how like innovative people are and like how creative people are and how like people have an opportunity to like really do stuff with jiu-jitsu. Like in the beginning, like I said, when I was first, people would say I was crazy for opening a school and be like, well, there's no money in jiu-jitsu. I was like, okay, whatever. I don't really care about that. But like now you see like the jiu-jitsu con, like if you haven't ever been to jiu-jitsu con, like it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and just over the past couple of years, like since it's been growing so much, and now it's like this massive event with like vendors and seminars and talks and masters worlds and con, like all in the same facility. Like it's so cool. And it's like, and then you saw like what Craig Jones did with like, with that, like that. Yeah. Like it's like, oh my God, like these people are like so cool. Like what they're, like the innovation within jiu-jitsu or behind jiu-jitsu and like where it's going, it's so creative. It's opening up so many more opportunities for people. So I think it's really cool where jiu-jitsu is going. I do really hope that the martial art aspect of jiu-jitsu always stays true, and the discipline of it and like the culture of it stays. But I love I'll say it again, the creative innovation of jiu-jitsu and the opportunities it brings to people. It's really cool to watch.
Nice. Yeah. It's definitely grown, I think, in the last 20 years, something like exponentially.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And hopefully it keeps going in that direction, right? Something that you know very well, I think, throughout your training has been, and you mentioned personal training as well, has been a certain amount of cross-training, right? Like, so with your experience, like, can you share maybe as someone who is firmly in their 40s, you know, getting older, or that might perhaps you have a family or you have other responsibilities or you have 2 or 3 jobs, whatever the case may be, for busy people and busy lives that love jiu-jitsu and want to continue doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. What do you recommend? Like, is it more jiu-jitsu? Is it, you know, complementing with some strength training? Is it nutrition? Like, what is it for you, man?
Well, I'll say for me, like for sure, I don't train the same now in my 30s the way I did in my 20s. I was training hours and hours and hours and hours in my 20s. And I sustained like some pretty like extensive injuries. You know, I've actually fully torn both of my LCLs, and that's why I've been out of competition for the last couple of years. But I think for me, as I'm getting older, I mean, like I'm only in my 30s, but like it's definitely, there's a component of like, how am I taking care of my body now, especially enduring some pretty hefty injuries. And so I do believe that it should be a lifestyle. Like you should be mindful of how you're eating. Like you should be mindful of your sleep, and you should be mindful of your diet and maybe supplementing. I mean, I love to weight train. Like I didn't before, even though I was a personal trainer. But it was when I got hurt that I didn't really have the option of doing jiu-jitsu. But quickly with the LCLs, luckily I was able to start exercising. So I got into strength training. And then once I got back on the mat, before I hurt myself again, I really noticed like a massive difference.
Right.
And so I think it's mostly like understanding that as we age, things are going to change. But as long as you're taking care of yourself to the best of your ability, like you can stay within the sport.
Nice.
It just, like I said, I don't train the way I did when I was 20. I'm sure I'm going to train different when I'm in my 40s. And so it's just about taking care of your body. And then, I mean, that should just go without say anyways. And it makes me sad when people like neglect their health, but that's a whole nother topic of life.
100%.
But I just think for me, it's about being mindful. And then like the biggest thing is like also having to learn this for myself is your body talks to you. Like your body talks to you, your body will let you know what it needs.
Right.
You know, and my mom has always said, like, if you don't let your body down for a rest, it'll take you down. And it's so true.
Wise words, mama.
Wise words, mama. But yeah, I think like your training will change over the years, your speed, your strength, what you have to give on a given day. But it's just about listening to your body and showing up the best way you can with the day that you're on. Like we're not robots, you know, we're human beings and we have families and life and friends and hard times and good times. And it all reflects like into our training. But I think like the consistency in health, being mindful about what you're putting into your body, whether it's like physically or like mentally, all takes an effect. The things we read, the things we watch, what we follow on social media, like it's all like we're ingesting and it like has, you know, some of the times in my life where I've been hurt, I've been in a really poor mental state in my life and going through really dark times in my life and not listening to my body and pushing through. And so desperately, all my body needed was like rest and stillness and with the chaos I was going on through in my everyday life. And I didn't listen and I pushed through and I powered through and it resulted in big injuries. And so I think, you know, as I have stepped into my 30s and in the maturity in that is I used to, in my 20s, just power through. And that's not the answer. The answer is like, can you take a moment to be still and to listen to your body? Because if you take that moment to listen, I promise you, it will tell you what it needs. And again, I was like the worst at that ever. It's taken a lot to adopt that kind of mentality and I still work with it every day. Like there's moments where I should not be training and people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, but it's awareness. And I think just overall taking care of your health, like not just your physical being, but your mental being as well. That'll keep you going. It'll keep you on the mat.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like that's a skill that we learn in jiu-jitsu, which is to check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
Right? And some of us will take more time. I'll speak for myself. We'll take more time to learn that skill, right, than maybe somebody else. But you eventually learn it or you stop coming to jiu-jitsu because it's an ego check every single time.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me as though you're applying that same kind of principle in terms of like listening to your body and, you know, giving it what it's asking for, whether that's rest or food or, you know, flexibility, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe one complimentary question about cross-training, because I'm curious what your thoughts are on the matter. So, posing it like this is almost like as though I'm trying to stir the pot. Is jiu-jitsu enough? But you mentioned...
Oh, gosh.
Right? Yeah. No, I mean, like, because you mentioned Osotogari earlier, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a huge... And we also talked about, briefly, about some of the amazing events that are out there. A lot of them are no-gi, featuring a lot of, you know, prominent... Like, wrestling is quite prominent in those as a skill set that's very helpful, right? It is a form of grappling. Of course, judo is as well. And there are others. But do you think it's necessary at some point for someone to explore and to learn other modalities of grappling, or is jiu-jitsu enough? Just what are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, I think it's dependent on the goal
Nice.
of the individual.
Yeah.
Because maybe for someone who's, you know, a doctor and he has a family and this is his time to have a hobby. And something beautiful about jiu-jitsu is like I'll speak for myself, but when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, I'm not thinking about things.
Right.
When I'm training, I'm not thinking about whatever. I'm thinking about training. I'm thinking about sparring. It gives me that time and space. And sometimes, you know, people need 1 hour of time and space to dedicate themselves to a craft and to have a community of people around them. And so, jiu-jitsu is enough. Now you want to be like an athlete or you have like a love for knowledge and learning. I have a student here and I think it's so cool. He's involved in like 3 or 4 different styles of martial arts, from like Kali and sticks to jiu-jitsu to I don't even know what all the things he does, but he does a bunch of things. And I'm like, well, that's super cool because he loves to learn.
Right.
doesn't want to go out and compete, but he loves learning. And so he's in multiple things.
Yeah.
And so for him, no, jiu-jitsu is not enough. And then you have like an athlete like who wants to go out and compete, and they're in the gi and they love takedowns. They're going to focus on like judo.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, they also love to compete in no-gi. So maybe I should learn a wrestling base, and they touch base in like multiple sports that will help them excel within their goals. So I think it's truly dependent on the individual and what's important to them, because jiu-jitsu can be enough. Just as confidently I could say, no, jiu-jitsu is not enough. It's just based on like the individual and what's important to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. It's great insight. So I guess our final segment then is that we want to know how we learn from you, and how, what the details are around Legacy West Valley, what programs are available, and what stuff you got going on.
So I'm Legacy West Valley in Northridge, California, 9054 Tampa Avenue. We have kids jiu-jitsu 6 days a week. We have adults jiu-jitsu, both gi and no gi. We have a pretty broad schedule. Early morning, midday, evening classes. And then we also offer traditional Muay Thai as well. So, we offer a free class. So if you want to come in and train, we have LegacyWestValley.com if you want to check out our website. And on Instagram, Legacy West Valley, and just come through, train, and that's it.
Thank you so much, honestly,
sincerely,
for taking the time, joining us on the Grappling Monthly podcast, which is also in its infancy.
Yes.
But having, I think, seen this school, open, and the way that things are going, I can wholeheartedly believe and see that it's just going to be the great success. So
thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for having me, and good luck on your podcast endeavor.
Woohoo!